In the far reaches of the galaxy, there existed a race that prided itself on dominance, cruelty, and their twisted form of entertainment. These aliens, towering beings with sharp, angular features and skin that shimmered like cold steel, were known as the Yrax. They conquered countless worlds, each conquest accompanied by a gruesome celebration, a ritual that showcased their power. In their colossal arenas, they fed lesser creatures, prisoners of war, or conquered species to a monstrous beast. For the Yrax, this wasn't just a spectacle, it was a demonstration of their dominance, a reminder to every living being that defiance against their empire was futile. The arena itself was a sprawling structure, miles wide, carved into the rocky landscape of their capital planet. Its walls were high and imposing, filled with seats occupied by thousands of Yrax citizens who roared with excitement at the prospect of watching yet another being torn apart. The Colosseum's atmosphere was heavy, electric with anticipation. This was more than a simple execution, it was their culture's most celebrated form of entertainment, a symbol of their superiority. In the center of this massive Colosseum stood the creature they called the Devourer. Towering over 20 feet, it resembled a hybrid of a reptile and a nightmare. Its scales, dark and ridged, glistened under the pale alien sun, each one sharper than the deadliest blade. Its 4 muscular legs ended in claws that could tear through flesh, bone, and metal with ease. Its eyes, crimson and soulless, scanned the arena with an insatiable hunger, as if waiting for the next meal to be delivered to it. Its maw, wide and filled with rows of jagged teeth, could snap a creature in two without effort. Each of its breaths was a rumbling growl that reverberated throughout the arena, sending chills down the spines of all who witnessed it. The Yrax believed that no creature in the universe could stand against the Devourer. It had been fed countless beings, some who tried to flee, others who begged for mercy, and still others who fought bravely to their last breath, but none survived. Its hunger was never sated, and the spectacle of its feeding was always the same. But today, something was different. The next creature to be fed to the beast wasn't an alien from a distant world, nor was it a warrior from a fallen army. Today, the Yrax had chosen a human child. The decision to choose a human was not made lightly. To the Yrax, humans were insignificant, weak creatures from a backwater planet that posed no real threat. This particular child had been captured during one of their latest expeditions. The Yrax, always seeking new ways to humiliate their enemies, had decided that feeding a mere human child to their most fearsome creature would be the ultimate insult. To them, it was a message: humans were so beneath them that they didn't even warrant a warrior's death. They were nothing but food for the Devourer. The child, no older than 8, was led into the arena, shackled and trembling. His clothes were torn, and his face was smeared with dirt and tears. His small frame seemed even smaller in the vastness of the Colosseum, dwarfed by the enormity of the beast that awaited him. As he was dragged into the center, the crowd erupted into a frenzy, their jeers and laughter echoing throughout the arena. To the Yrax, this was a perfect display of their might, a helpless human child about to be devoured by their most terrifying creation. The boy named Ben had been taken from his home on Earth in the dead of night. He remembered the sound of shattering glass, the screams of his parents, and the cold hands that had snatched him away. 4 days he had been held in a cold, dark cell, not understanding why this had happened to him. He was just a kid. He had no weapons, no special abilities, no way to fight back. And now, as he stood in the center of the arena, staring at the enormous creature that was about to kill him, he felt more alone and terrified than ever before. Ben's heart pounded in his chest as he looked around. Thousands of alien eyes were on him, watching, waiting for the inevitable. He had no idea what he could do. He was just a child. He had no power here. The creature before him let out a low, rumbling growl, its massive body shifting as it prepared to attack. The crowd grew silent, the anticipation thick in the air. Ben's knees shook, and he felt his breath catching in his throat. He wanted to cry, to scream, to run, but there was nowhere to go. The Yrax, seated high above in their luxury boxes, watched with smug satisfaction. To them, this was a trivial matter, another day of entertainment. The humans had dared to defy them, and now they would learn the price. Ben was nothing more than a pawn in their cruel game, a symbol of humanity's weakness. And in mere moments, he would be nothing more than a memory. The silence stretched on as the beast locked its gaze onto Ben, its hunger growing more intense with each passing second. The boy felt a wave of cold wash over him. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs felt like they were made of lead. He looked up at the beast, its towering form casting a long shadow over him. This was it. This was the end. The creature lunged forward with a speed that defied its size, its jaws snapping open wide, ready to engulf the child in a single, deadly bite. The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices blending into a deafening roar. Ben's eyes widened as the beast closed in. Time seemed to slow down. He had only seconds to act, if there was anything he could do at all. In that fleeting moment, something deep inside Ben stirred. A flicker of survival, of hope, of defiance. He may have been just a child, but something in him refused to simply give in to death. The terror was still there, but alongside it was a tiny ember of courage. He knew he had to move. He had to try something, anything. And as the jaws of the devourer came within inches of him, Ben took his first step into the unknown. The air in the Colosseum felt heavy, thick with the anticipation of a bloodbath. Ben's eyes darted between the monstrous beasts before him and the towering walls that trapped him in this nightmare. His hands shook, his breathing quick and shallow. The low growl of the devourer vibrated through the ground beneath his feet, and for a moment, he could hear nothing but the thunderous pounding of his own heart. Fear consumed him. He had seen no way out. All he could feel was the terror of the inevitable, the weight of the alien eyes on him, watching, waiting for him to meet his gruesome end. But amid that terror, something else stirred. A thought, a fleeting instinct that seemed to rise from the core of his being. It wasn't the hopeless surrender he had expected. Instead, it was something new, a defiant, stubborn refusal to give up, even in the face of such overwhelming odds. He had been told he was just a kid, powerless, but something inside him pushed back against that idea. His legs trembled, his mind raced, but he wasn't going to let himself die without trying. There had to be a way. The creature lunged, its gaping maw wide open, saliva dripping from its sharp teeth. The movement was fast, a blur of muscle and raw power. Ben's body reacted before his mind could fully process what was happening. He dropped to the ground, narrowly avoiding the beast's deadly jaws as they snapped shut where he had been standing just seconds before. His heart skipped a beat. The crowd gasped, the sound of thousands of aliens' shock filling the arena. They hadn't expected him to survive the first strike. Neither had Ben. He scrambled to his feet, adrenaline now coursing through his veins. His breathing was ragged, but his mind was sharp. There was no time to think. The beast was already turning, its crimson eyes locked on him with renewed hunger, but Ben could sense something shifting. The creature hesitated, if only for a fraction of a second, as if it hadn't anticipated its prey would move so swiftly. It was a moment so brief that it was almost imperceptible to the watching crowd, but Ben felt it. A flicker of hope. The Yurax, seated high above the Colosseum floor, leaned forward in disbelief. This was supposed to be over already. A single bite, a quick end, and their beast would be victorious once again. But the human child had moved, had survived, and now stood defiantly in the middle of the arena. Confusion rippled through the spectators, their jeers and laughter replaced by murmurs of bewilderment. How could such a weak and insignificant creature avoid the attack? Was it a fluke? An accident? Ben didn't know how long he could keep this up, but something in him had shifted. He wasn't just running on fear anymore. As the devourer circled him, its claws digging into the dirt, he realized that he might have a chance, no matter how slim. The beast moved with precision, but Ben saw something in its movements that gave him pause. It wasn't just mindless rage. The creature was studying him, gauging him like a predator that hadn't yet figured out its prey. But that also meant it wasn't invincible. It could be outsmarted. The next time the devourer lunged, Ben was ready. He threw himself to the side, rolling across the ground as the beast's claws swiped through the air where his head had been. Another close call, but this time, the crowd fell silent. This wasn't the expected spectacle. The child should have been dead by now. There should have been blood. But instead, the boy was fighting back, not with strength, but with agility, with the sharpness of his instincts. The alien leaders exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't part of the plan. The beast was supposed to be invincible, a reminder of their overwhelming power. And yet here was this child, not just surviving but resisting. They had underestimated him, underestimated the resilience of the human spirit. It wasn't just physical strength that mattered in these moments. It was something deeper, something more primal. They had seen humans as fragile, easily broken. Now they were beginning to question that assumption. Ben could feel the weight of every eye in the arena on him, but he didn't care. The crowd, the aliens, the beasts, they were all obstacles in the way of his survival. He focused only on staying alive, on finding a way to outmaneuver the creature that was hunting him. He had no weapons, no tools, but he had something the Yrax couldn't understand. He had the will to survive. With each failed attack, the devourer grew more agitated. Its growls became deeper, more frustrated. It wasn't used to this. Prey didn't fight back. Prey didn't last this long. The beast was losing its patience, and in its growing frustration, Ben saw his opportunity. He had no idea why the creature hadn't killed him yet, but he knew that hesitation could be exploited. He just needed to stay one step ahead. The alien spectators watched in stunned silence as the child continued to evade the beast. Every time the devourer lunged, Ben found a way to dodge or escape. He wasn't fast enough to outrun it, but he was quick enough to survive, and that was all that mattered. The beast, for all its size and power, was becoming more desperate. Ben could feel it. And the crowd, once so sure of their own superiority, was now filled with unease. They had come to watch an execution, but what they were witnessing was something else entirely. It wasn't just luck that kept Ben alive. It was something more, something the Yrax had never considered. Humans had been pushed to the brink before, faced with challenges that seemed insurmountable, and yet they survived. They adapted. They fought back. That same spirit, that same resilience, was what was keeping Ben on his feet. He wasn't just a victim anymore. He was defying the expectations of everyone around him. The alien leaders could hardly believe what they were seeing. This was supposed to be an easy victory, a show of strength, but instead, they were witnessing something that shook the very foundations of their beliefs. How could a human child stand against their greatest weapon? What was this power that allowed him to resist? Ben stood there, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. The devourer, for the first time, looked uncertain. It prowled around him, no longer the unstoppable force it had been moments ago. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't roar. They watched in stunned silence, unsure of what would happen next. And as Ben stared into the beast's eyes, he realized something. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was a fight. And he wasn't going to back down. As the beast prowled in front of Ben, its massive form casting an oppressive shadow over him, something inside the boy stirred, something that had nothing to do with fear. He had been running on instinct, narrowly dodging death at every turn. But in this moment, as the creature prepared for yet another attack, Ben felt an odd stillness. He didn't flinch, didn't move. His heart pounded, but not with the terror that had consumed him moments earlier. Instead, there was something deeper, an instinct he couldn't explain, something primal that drew him toward the beast. He raised his hand, not in defense, but in a gesture of calm. The alien spectators gasped. This child, a mere human, was doing something no one had ever dared. He wasn't running, and he wasn't fighting. He was reaching out to the creature as if there was a mutual understanding between them. For a moment the beast froze, its crimson eyes locked on Ben. It hesitated, something that hadn't happened before. It seemed to sense something familiar yet incomprehensible, as if the boy's presence was awakening a long-buried connection deep within its monstrous frame. Ben didn't know why he raised his hand or why he stood so still, but something in him told him this was right. He made no sound, but his body language spoke volumes. His small figure was dwarfed by the beast, yet he radiated a quiet strength. The creature, instead of lunging, shifted its weight, the tension in its muscles visibly lessening. The crowd watched in stunned silence. What was happening? This was not the violent spectacle they had come to see. The beast's growls grew quieter, its posture less aggressive. Ben remained steady, his eyes never leaving the creature's. He felt a pull, as though they were connected on a level that transcended the physical. The air between them crackled with an unseen energy, something that neither the alien spectators nor the leaders could understand. But Ben felt it clearly. He wasn't sure how, but he knew he wasn't in danger anymore. Not from this creature. The alien crowd, once roaring with bloodlust, now murmured in confusion. The beast, their symbol of dominance, was no longer the mindless killer they had known. It was acting differently, as though it recognized something in the child, something they couldn't see. Shock rippled through the audience as the creature took a step back, lowering its head slightly, as if acknowledging Ben. This was not submission born of defeat, but something much deeper. The connection between the two was undeniable, yet completely unexpected. From their high vantage point, the alien leaders exchanged panicked glances. This was not how it was supposed to go. The Devourer was their creation, their ultimate weapon, and now it was defying them. The implications were staggering. How could a mere child, a human no less, bring their beast to heel? Their initial disbelief quickly turned to outrage. This was an insult to their power, a mockery of everything they had built. But as much as they wanted to regain control, it was clear that the bond between the child and the creature had taken root. The leaders barked orders to their guards, trying to force the beast to attack again. Commands were sent through neural links, invisible signals designed to trigger the creature's killer instincts. But nothing happened. The Devourer didn't react to their commands. It only had eyes for Ben. As the moments passed, the bond between them only grew stronger. Ben could sense the beast's emotions, its confusion, its pain, and something else. Loneliness. Despite its monstrous exterior, it was a creature bound to its instincts, forced to kill for the entertainment of others. But in Ben, it seemed to find something different. Something it hadn't encountered before: compassion. It was as though the boy understood the creature in a way no one else could. He didn't see it as a monster. He saw it as something more. The crowd's confusion turned to disbelief. How could this child, this small, insignificant human, achieve what no one else had? The Devourer, their symbol of fear and dominance, was standing before him, calm, its once bloodthirsty eyes softened. And then, in an action that shocked everyone, the creature knelt. Its massive head lowered to the ground in front of Ben, a gesture of trust, perhaps even loyalty. The Colosseum fell into a stunned silence. Ben, his heart racing but his movements steady, stepped forward. He placed his hand on the creature's rough skin, feeling the warmth beneath its scales. The connection between them was undeniable now, a bond forged not through dominance, but through understanding. The Devourer, the galaxy's most feared predator, had chosen not to harm him, but to protect him. Panic spread among the alien leaders. Their prized beast, the one they used to crush rebellions and display their power, was no longer under their control. They frantically tried to reassert dominance, sending more commands, shouting orders, but it was useless. The creature had chosen its path. It wasn't theirs anymore. The realization hit them like a tidal wave. This child had done what they could never have imagined. He had bonded with the beast on a level they didn't understand, one that defied their technological control. As the tension in the arena reached its peak, Ben did something no one could have predicted. With a calm confidence that belied his years, he climbed onto the back of the beast. The massive creature, once a symbol of terror, allowed him to mount it without protest. The crowd erupted into chaos. This wasn't just defiance. This was a complete inversion of everything the Yrax believed. Their ultimate weapon had been tamed by a human child. From his perch atop the creature, Ben could see the alien leaders scrambling, their once smug expressions replaced by fear. They had lost control, not just of the beast, but of the narrative they had created. This child had shown them something they couldn't explain, something that shook the very foundation of their belief in their superiority. As Ben sat there, atop the galaxy's most feared predator, the message was clear. The bond between them was unbreakable now. The creature, once a symbol of destruction, had become something more. And the Iraqs, for all their power, were left watching, powerless to stop what had begun. The realization that they had lost control hit the alien leaders like a crashing wave. They had always viewed their empire as invincible, but the sight before them, the human child atop their fiercest beast, standing defiantly in the center of the arena, undermined everything they believed in. Panic spread quickly among them. The bond between the child and the beast was more than just an anomaly. It was a threat, a direct challenge to their authority. If a single human could tame their most powerful weapon, what else could humanity be capable of? They couldn't allow this symbol of defiance to stand. In their desperation, the alien rulers barked orders to the guards stationed around the Colosseum. Soldiers, clad in gleaming armor and armed with high-tech weaponry, rushed forward, their mission clear: destroy the child and the beast before the crowd could get any ideas. The spectators, still reeling from the shock of what they had witnessed, watched as the soldiers stormed the arena. The child's fate, it seemed, was sealed. The Iraqs would not allow this rebellion to take root. But the beast, no longer an instrument of their will, was now fiercely loyal to the child. With a deep, guttural roar that shook the Colosseum to its core, it stood its ground, shielding Ben from the advancing soldiers. The first wave of attackers rushed forward, weapons drawn, but the beast moved with a terrifying grace, swatting them aside with its massive claws. What had once been a mindless predator now fought with purpose, every strike calculated, every move precise. The alien soldiers, despite their advanced technology, were no match for the creature's raw power and cunning. The battle in the Colosseum escalated quickly. The beast tore through the soldiers with a ferocity that left the audience in awe. Ben, still atop the creature, held on as it moved with deadly efficiency, outsmarting the alien forces at every turn. It was clear that this wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for freedom. The child and the beast were no longer victims of the Iraq's cruelty. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the battle raged, something began to shift in the Colosseum. The alien spectators, once bloodthirsty and eager for a show, began to see the situation differently. The defiance of the child and the beast wasn't just an act of rebellion, it was a symbol of hope. For too long, the Iraqs had ruled through fear, using the beast as a tool to keep other species in line. But now, in this moment, they saw that the Iraqs weren't invincible. A human child, something they had all considered weak and insignificant, had managed to turn the tide. It was a profound realization. One by one, murmurs of dissent began to spread through the crowd. The other species, long subjugated by the Iraqs, started to see this as their chance. If a child could stand against the Empire, then so could they. Slowly, the energy in the arena began to shift. What had started as a simple spectacle of violence was transforming into something far more dangerous for the Iraqs: a revolt. The alien rulers, sensing the growing unrest, grew frantic. They issued more commands, deploying additional troops to quell the uprising before it could begin. But it was too late. The child and the beast had ignited something that couldn't be extinguished. As the crowd watched the soldiers fall to the beast's fury, they began to rise from their seats. The oppressed species of the galaxy, long kept in line through fear, were no longer willing to sit idly by. The child's courage had shown them that even the mighty Iraqs could be defeated. Chaos erupted in the Colosseum as the spectators turned on their captors. The revolt spread like wildfire, with species from all corners of the galaxy joining the fray. What had started as a simple act of survival had become a full-scale rebellion. The Iraqs, once so confident in their dominance, were now facing the very thing they had sought to avoid: an uprising fueled by hope, by defiance, and by the realization that their power was not absolute. In the midst of the chaos, the alien leaders watched in horror as their empire began to crumble. They had never considered the possibility that the humans, a species they had deemed insignificant, could pose any real threat. But now, as they saw their soldiers fall and their subjects rise against them, they understood the truth. Humanity, with its adaptability, resilience, and capacity for forming bonds, was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The child's ability to connect with the beast wasn't a fluke. It was a glimpse into humanity's hidden potential, something no alien race had anticipated. Ben, still atop the beast, watched as the revolt unfolded around him. The once feared rulers of the galaxy were now scrambling to hold on to their power, but it was clear they had already lost. The child and the beast had become symbols of something far greater than themselves, symbols of resistance, of the strength that comes from unity, and of the power that lies within even the most unlikely of beings. As the final wave of alien soldiers fell, the Colosseum grew quiet. The revolt had spread beyond the walls of the arena, but here, in this moment, it was clear that a new era was dawning. Ben, his heart still pounding from the intensity of the battle, looked out over the destruction. The Iraqs had fallen, their reign of terror over. And it had all started with a single act of defiance, a bond between a human child and a beast that no one had believed could be tamed. In the silence that followed, Ben glanced down at the beast, its massive form still standing strong beneath him. They had done it, together. The galaxy, once ruled by fear, would now have to reckon with the strength of humanity, a strength that no one had expected. As Ben and the beast stood in the center of the arena, the message was clear. The Iraqs were finished, and humanity, once underestimated and overlooked, had proven its worth. The child gave a final, quiet look to the alien leaders, who now stood powerless in the face of the uprising. This was the beginning of a new era, one where the galaxy would no longer live in fear, and where the hidden potential of humanity would rise to the forefront. The dawn of a new age had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again.